Hello, it's Liz here from Skills4Parents, supporting you with the education of your children. Today in my Facebook group, Education Support for Parents, we had a question about translation. So I'm going to explain a little bit about it because I thought it was easier to record a video than it would be to write out the instructions. So translation is one of the 4 transformations. They are translation, rotation, enlargement, and reflection. And translation is probably the simplest of them. It's the one we often teach first. And if we think about what the word translation means when we've come across it in other contexts, we can think about translating a language. So making that language go from one to another thing, but it's still got the same meaning. So we can take that into translation in terms of mathematics by thinking about moving a shape. The shape doesn't change, just like the meaning doesn't change in language. The shape doesn't change, but it does move. So it's a direct translation. It's direct moving without changing the shape. So let's have a look at a question and see how we find that. So here is a translation question, and it's asking us to translate shape P 3 squares to the left and 2 squares down. So that basically means move it 3 squares to the left and 2 squares down. And to get this correct without making a mistake, I always recommend going for a vertex, a corner. And I will often label them A, B and C, because then when we come on to other transformations, it does then make it easier to work out which corner you're doing. So if we move this 3 to the left and 2 down, we end up here. So corner A is now here, and we put a little A dash to show that we've done something to it, that we've transformed it. And then B, we do 3 squares to the left and 2 squares down. And then C, we do exactly the same. And what you'll see is the shape hasn't changed. The shape is exactly the same. It's just moved. Now, the question that the person in my group asked was not quite like that, because what they had was something like this, where there was this vector, which looks really scary. I promise you it's not. The top number is what I would essentially call your X, and your bottom number your Y. So it's a little bit like a coordinate, but the Y has been brought down and underneath. And that means that the top number represents the movement in the X direction, and the bottom number means the movement in the Y direction. And if it's positive or negative, you can use the axes to help you decide. So this one is 6, and it's a positive 6. So it's X direction. Positives are going to the right. So we're going to need to move it 6 to the right. And then because the 1 is negative, we will move it 1 down. So if I just call that A, that is going to be A dashed. And our next point underneath, oops, that's not very straight, goes there. So if we take this one, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the right, 1 down. That point is now there. And there's our shape. So we've translated it by this vector 6 minus 1. Now, sometimes you get asked to work backwards. You get asked to describe fully a transformation. Now, this says a single transformation, so that tells you it's just using one of them. And it says that we'll take shape P, or map shape P, onto shape Q. So we take a corner, and we find its corresponding corner, and we see how we have to move to get from one to the other. So 1, 2, 3 to the right, and 1 down. So we write here translation, because that tells whoever's marking it that that's what the transformation is. And then we want our vector, and we said 3 to the right, so that's the top number, and then 1 down, so that's the bottom number, but because it's down and the bottom below the 0 is negative, we make that -1. I hope that helps. I'd love to know what you think. If you're not in education support for parents, then do come and join us and get help with maths and support with the education of your child.